Well, hello. My name is Asya, and today I have come to tell you that some things in your life are a lie. Yeah, please pay attention to the word. The War of the Roses. As the well-known show The Game of Thrones gained popularity, we all have become familiar with this period of English history, the War of the Roses. We all know that George Martin was inspired by it, that King Margaret of Anjou is Cersei Lannister, and so on and so forth. And now we know for sure, it's a general truth, that the War of the Roses is a dynastic war between the Yorks and the Lancasters. And the emblems of these two houses were the roses. Yorks, white roses, Lancasters, red roses, right? Right. So, in fact, it is not a dynastic conflict, and it is not between Yorks and the Lancasters, and it has actually nothing to do with roses at all. So, what is it? The War of the Roses. Let's start from the beginning. At first, the conflict had nothing to do with the crown. Nothing. Yeah, thank you. Richard, Duke of York, rebelled in 1452 for a reason. At that time, King Henry VI was the King of England. And there is actually an argument between the historians whether he was mad or retarded, because he just took the official posts of Richard and his supporters from them and gave them to his friends. And for Richard, it was actually a matter of survival, because the time was harsh and it was very hard to make both ends meet, even if you are a Duke of York. Like, the income from your lands is not enough. And the Richard of York, he had asked the king to give him the posts back, but Henry VI, he just took them away over and over again. And it was like when you go to your boss and say that you work for 30 years for him, and you have 5 children, and you have to you're a good worker, and he swears he would raise your salary, but then you go away, and he winks to his favorite like that, and raises his salary. Well, what happened next? In 1460, Richard of York decides that he's fed up with it, and he wants to be king, but he dies. But he has a son, Edward. And Edward takes his place in the mutiny. And soon he was crowned as Henry IV. Yes, Henry VI goes to prison, and his wife Margaret of Anjou, that you know as Cersei Lannister, she and her son, they escaped to France. And a new round of the war just started, was a conflict between Edward IV and his supporter, Lord Warwick. He was called a kingmaker. Why? Well, Lord Richard Warwick had a conflict with Edward, with King Edward, and he decided that King Edward IV won't fire you if there will be no King Edward IV. So he escapes to France too, and persuades Queen Margaret to come back and take back the throne. So, and King Henry returns to the throne. He wins for a few months, and he becomes king again. But it turned out that King Henry became a queen for a day. Like, he was queen, but right. And he was very, very soon killed. Now, Edward IV takes back the throne, and what next? The next round of war came 12 years after the previous conflict. Edward IV dies, but his children were underage, so none of them could become king. And the younger brother of King Edward took over the power. And he, we all know, as the most Richard III, like the hunchback one, who ate his enemies for breakfast and was very cruel and envious. Yes, but he was very soon killed by his own citizens because he was not really popular. And so we are out of heirs. A distant relative of the Lancasters, which we know as Henry Tudor, became a king. And he married one of Edward's daughters. As a sign of reconciliation, Edward combined the white rose and the red rose. Wait, what roses? Precisely. Henry Tudor was the first one to perceive the roses as the emblems of the families. Please pay attention to the board. This is the coat of arms of the House of York. And this is the coat of arms of the House of Lancasters. Can you see any roses there? Neither do I. And a fun fact. Look at this picture. This is Edward IV of York. On his hat we can see a brooch, a rose-shaped brooch, and the rose is red. So, the point is, at that time there was a significant difference between a crest and an emblem. Each house had a crest and a whole bunch of different variable unnecessary emblems, and roses were emblems. Henry Tudor had to make himself a legitimate king, so he made the Yorks and the Lancasters usurpers, like they were bad kings because they killed their previous dynasty. And so he was the legitimate king, and he had to make himself a good picture. Yeah, and the term War of the Roses was actually used 3.5 centuries after the conflict itself. And it was used by Sir Walter Scott, and then popularized by William Shakespeare. And historians were like, well, very precise term. War of the Roses, right? It will do. And it's historical, so it's kind of good. And we now know this period as the War of the Roses. So, War of the Roses is still terra incognita. English historians are very meticulous, so they counted like the number of horses that were killed in each battle. But there is still a lot of mysteries. Like, was it a war or just a range of upheavals among the nobility of the England? Who were these people? Richard III, a cruel monster, or an innocent victim of propaganda? Who was Margaret of Anjou? Was it a cold-blooded monster too, or was it just a woman who fought for the rights of her husband and her children? And was the nation involved? Did they perceive the events as connected? And now, I want to ask you one thing. What did Darth Vader tell his son in the movie?
No, Luke, I'm your father. I am your father.
Are you sure about that?
I'm sure he said, no, I'm your father.
No. Well, find out.